Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I would encourage anyone that's brand new to the story to check out the webinar we did a couple months ago. It's on the Adelaide Capital YouTube channel. It does a very good job of an overview. This will really be a targeted webinar on the current program and the results that were put out recently. With me, I have CEO Darwin Green, who's going to do the overview. Hi, Darwin. Nice to see you.
And nice to see you, Deborah.
Congrats on the results. You might have to change the name of the company to High Grade instead of HighGold.
That's right. No, a great start. A fantastic start for sure.
Yeah, really good start to the program. Just as a reminder for everyone, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's presentation on their website. And there will be a Q&A section at the end, so feel free to input your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. And with that out of the way, yeah, Darwin, I don't know if you want to do a little bit of an overview of the company to start, or just get right into the results. Your call.
Well, all right. Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I put together a short deck here that just a real refresher to orient people where we are, and then I'll jump into the results because I think that's what most people are most interested in hearing. So, you know, we are HighGold Mining. Our ticker is HIGH on the TSX Venture. We also trade on the OTCQX to HGGOF. We got a tight share structure. We got a fair bit of cash in the bank, and we've got a great roster of shareholders, as you can see here. Great blue chip institutions, some high net worth and well-known mining personalities, and we also have the endorsement of a major senior gold producer, North American gold producer. Market cap right now is hovering around 100 million. Not much of an overhang in terms of warrants and options. So, you know, that's our story there. Also, I'd like to highlight, we do have coverage by two analysts, Brock Coulter-John with Cormark, and more recently, launching just last week, was Stephen Suk of Stifel GMP. Great to have that endorsement and additional voice on the story. Yeah, and so quickly, I mean, we do focus on high-grade gold environments in North America. The results we just had sort of help put an exclamation mark on that. We have a very large land position in the Timmins Camp, Ontario, and three principal properties there. And I'll touch on those briefly at the end of this presentation, but for now, I'll mostly focus on Johnson Tract, where we have a starting resource of, all told, a little over 800,000 ounces gold equivalent, at a bit better than 10 grams per ton gold equivalent. It is polymetallic, meaning we've, you know, there's gold, but there's also copper and zinc and lead and silver that comes along with it, as you'll see here. But about 50% of that value of the resource or the gold equivalent is gold. Just to get you sort of located, we're in the Cook Inlet region of Alaska, which means we're not very far from established infrastructure and workforce. We're about a 40-minute flight by small fixed wing from Anchorage. We've got an airstrip on site. We're actually a closer flight from towns of Ninilchik and Homer. We actually boat and barge materials across the inlet there. It's about 30-40 miles across. So great location to be, and a very large land position that we control. So just zooming in a little closer on that, kind of a stylized satellite image here, highlighting most of the main prospects that have been defined. So in the lower left kind of, or bottom prospect there is where our main deposit sits. And then the new discovery we announced, or new high-grade results we just announced last week, were from the DC prospect sitting about 4 kilometers to the north. It's not hard to imagine these two being combined if DC grows into sort of one operation where you're just trucking material between the two deposit areas in a common processing facility. One of the things we really like, you know, Alaska is incredibly well endowed with mineral deposits. A lot of them are in very tough spots, very remote spots. We're just a few miles from deep tidewater. And there's been, in the past, they've evaluated a few different road options to access it. Be about 15 miles of road to get in here. So it's a big difference maker for projects like these in terms of actually getting them off the ground to build them. So again, just a quick cover off on what we have at the main deposit and really what we think separates it from the pack. We've got this fantastic grade, but we also have these tremendous true thicknesses, sort of averaging 20 to 50 meters thick as part of our main ore deposit, subvertical dipping. There's a lot to like from a mining perspective. We do envision this as an underground operation, but it's got bulk mineable attributes to it. Easy to access. You'd have a ramp from the valley floor up to the bottom of the deposit. So this is our main deposit area. It's an area that we are drilling, we are growing, we are expanding that deposit. We'll come out with a new resource early in the new year after we get all of the results back from this year's drilling. Whereas the new deposit we found, or new zone we found, is separate from this zone. And as I like to quote our new analyst who's covering us, he called it a mining engineer's dream, because there's just a lot of attributes here that make it fairly simple and fairly straightforward in terms of mineability. That's why we like to consider it sort of the ideal mineral deposit. While we don't have economics yet, and we're still focused on establishing scale and growing the deposit, what we do see is very attractive. Not just from an engineer's perspective, but I think from a permitting and a feel-good perspective, and that it's the type of mine that we think people should feel good about if it does go the distance, in that it would be small footprint, it would be underground, and perhaps most importantly, there's native corporate interest, in that there is an Alaska Native corporation whose shareholders are the indigenous people in the surrounding region. We are leasing the ground from them. They have a royalty right and ability to back into part of the deposit, which is very attractive in our view from an ESG standpoint and from a permitting standpoint. So our focus right now really is on establishing scale. We're trying to do that two ways, both by growing the existing resource, but also by identifying other satellite deposits to the main deposit that we've found. And it really is one of the attributes we found most compelling about the project when we first acquired it. We've been at it for a couple of years now, but this year is the first time we've actually drill tested any areas outside of the main deposit environment. And when you fly this property, it's a big property. It's about 12 kilometers in length of sort of strike potential of Gaussian alteration zones and prospects, like you see on the images in the left here. So to date, as I say, most of our efforts have been on the Johnson Tract deposit itself here. This year is the first year we've gotten out with the drill to test some of those prospects and other prospects, those regional prospects. And this is a very busy map, but it's just to highlight how many of these prospects we're trying to get after. We had a very aggressive surface program last year in which we were mapping and prospecting and basically identifying and understanding the opportunities at these other prospect areas, which had seen no work since the early 1980s. And we liked what we saw, so we decided to dedicate about half of our drill meterage and budget this year to test those other prospects while we continued to drill the main deposit area, which is main deposit area shown down here in the lower left. Unfortunately, we aren't able to get to all of these prospects this year. We really liked what we saw at Difficult Creek, so the vast majority of our drilling has been there. We currently have a drill at Kona, and we have a couple drills at the main deposit here. Didn't get to Easy Creek and won't get to Milkbone this year, but certainly are going to be high on our list for next year. So, getting to the main event, this here is a satellite image annotated with some of the surface features and prospects for the Difficult Creek area, or DC for short. And one of the reasons we really like this prospect area is the scale of the system that we see. So this is, it's an area maybe 1.5 kilometers by 3 kilometers in terms of the footprint of alteration and mineralization that you can see at surface. The area where this drill hole from last week came out was up here at what we call Middle Difficult Creek, where there was a good surface showing and a couple of historic holes in that area. But you'll see that there's a lot more to the story than that. There's a very big vein field. This is a silver-rich epithermal vein field that we see at higher elevation. This is actually a ridge up here. Plenty of 100 gram to 1,000 gram plus silver grades with gold. And then if we drop off the southwest side of that, we start to pick up higher grade gold again, up to 184 grams over here. And there's a real story, we think, emerging here in terms of metal zonation and where that gold wants to be in the system. Yeah, we're looking forward to the rest of the results that come out of here. And next, I'll just walk you into a long section that's basically cut through here in this area. One of the things we see is that we see there's sort of an andesite. It's a geological unit. It's fairly flat-lying cover to this gold-rich part of the system, and these veins we see here seem to be leaking up into the overlying stratigraphy, which speaks to good potential at depth. And what we see here is the gold seems to be at that transition point. And that's where you see all that clay alteration. So yeah, just zooming in here on the drill hole. This was the first spot we drilled. This was our first hole drilled outside of the main deposit area. We started here because it was a good, it was a lower elevation. There was less snow at the earlier part of the year, but also we wanted to get ourselves oriented based on the mineralization we could see at surface. There was a handful of historic holes, and we thought there was very good potential for this thing to have some legs and grow. One thing we didn't realize is the potential for how high a grade gold there could be. The past holes that were drilled here had good widths of mineralization. They all hit gold up to 36 meters of 3.5 grams with, a narrow interval of 4.5 meters of 9.3 grams. At surface, we were getting up to 50 grams in grab samples, chip channel samples up to 22 grams. This hole here showed that there's clearly true bonanza grade within this system. So this 6.4 meter interval included 2 multi-ounce intervals. One was 1.5 meters of 60 grams gold with about 220 grams silver. There was another sub-interval of 1.26 meters, a separate sub-interval running 2,860 grams per ton gold with almost 10 kilos per ton silver. A very, very high grade, a true bonanza grade. And we love that it occurs within this broader envelope of mineralization. You're not going to hit that kind of grade in every hole, but the fact that you have that kind of grade is consistent with what we know about the property, and the fact that it occurs in this broader envelope is a very attractive aspect in terms of being able to continue to find more and from an ultimate mineability standpoint. So currently, we've drilled, we have 2 more holes on this section for which assays are pending. We actually have some assays pending from the lower reaches of this hole as well. And then we step further back behind this, and we've also spun out a long strike to see what kind of legs we have here. Unfortunately, we didn't know what we had at the time, so we did this first pass of drilling, drilled here, and then moved on, and then we only just got the assays back now. Otherwise, I think we would have been a lot more aggressive following up on this at the time. That said, we're not complaining. Just a quick look at what it looks like. It was a little bit subtle. There's a sort of a quite sulfide-rich vein material we're seeing, and in there was kind of a dull gray mineral that if you polished it up, it really started to shine up, and that was the acanthite. That's where all the silver is sitting, and we know the gold is sitting within that. We suspect there's electrum in there. We're pretty confident that's what we're seeing in that, but it was a little more subtle than you might expect given the types of grades that we're actually seeing. So, a tremendous start for us. I don't think we could have asked for more as a starting point. We've got another 17 about 16, 17 holes that have been drilled at the DC prospect that are still outstanding. Of that, there were 7 holes drilled within the Middle Difficult Creek prospect area. So we're still waiting on those 6 holes. We proceeded to test several of these other targets within that environment. So all of that data and results are pending. Very early days, but a great, exciting prospect, and really kind of without a sort of a shadow of a doubt demonstrated in our view, the multi-deposit opportunity that we have at Johnson, and really established Johnson as a true bonanza grade, high grade environment. And on a grade thickness basis, this hole is probably our best hole to date. We've drilled 75 to 100 meters plus of better than 10 grams gold at the main deposit. So it's kind of telling you something. I mean, this is a very, very significant intersection, and we anticipate being very busy here in the months and years ahead. So that's what's going on at Difficult Creek. Half of our program was also dedicated to the main deposit area. We had some early success there a few weeks back. We released our first hole as a step out. It hit very good mineralization as well. We are upgrading some of the deposit area there to generate a new resource. We've been stepping out. We've been testing other targets in that immediate environment. Lots of exciting things to come from there, with the ultimate goal of generating a updated resource estimate sometime in the new year once we get the balance of all the assays back. In the meantime, we intend to get busy in the Timmins camp. You know, it's a part of our story that's less well known, but it's a very important part of HighGold. We do control one of the largest land positions held by a junior gold explorer within the camp. It's a little over 240 square kilometers. The areas we're putting most of our attention right now are Golden Mile and Munro Croesus. And I'll just zoom in on the Croesus area here, just to give you an idea of where we expect to be drilling here before the year's out. We spent last couple of years consolidating our land position around the Croesus mine. It was home to some of this fabulously high grade past production, literally gold in the percents. And we did about 11 or 12 different deals to consolidate that land package that had been in sort of fragmented ownership for years. And really what that led to was virtually no work done on a lot of this property since the 1930s. So very excited about it. In the meantime, our neighbors have been very active with Moneta doubling the size of the Golden Highway deposit and then acquiring O3's neighboring deposit. So there's an 8.5 million ounce endowment rate there. Mayfair has been very active on the Fengib deposit, 2 million ounces. They have their sights on 3+. And then we have McEwen Mining's Black Fox mining operation on the other side of us. So really good hunting ground. We basically have virgin turf in a very well-established belt. That's going to be a nice area of activity for us here in the months ahead as we wind down in Alaska for the winter. So in terms of catalysts, you know, we targeted 20,000 meters this year for our drill program. We'll end up short of that. We didn't get quite the productivity we wanted. We've released 2 holes to date as of today. So there's a whole lot of drill holes and assays outstanding. So should be lots of news flow there. As I say, it's a mix of deposit expansion and drilling for new discoveries. We're also doing some metallurgical work. That's going to feed into, you know, future sort of engineering and economic type studies on the back of the resource. We're not promising that we're going to do a PEA, but we want to be in a position that we can do one. Yeah, that new resource estimate I'd target sometime, you know, I don't know, probably April is when you'd likely see that come out. After, I expect we won't get all the assays back from Alaska until sometime late January, and lots of drilling through the winter in Ontario. So, you know, that's our story. You know, as a group, we're committed to doing things right. We see it as a privilege to operate in the lands where we do operate, and we're having a lot of fun doing it. So I will stop my screen share here, Deb, unless you want me to keep it up.
Oh, you're good. Thanks for the update. Seems like you've got a ton of news flow coming over the next couple months. So it's an exciting time, I think, for the company. So I think there's one audience question. I was going to say, feel free to input some questions. So what is the greatest impediment to bringing Johnson Tract?
You broke up on me there, Deb, but I'm guessing the question was what's into production. Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, we like the permittability of the project due to the nature and makeup of the project as we see it right now. We are surrounded by a park, and that's something that we're comfortable with. You know, there's an interesting history to the creation of that park, and that really was that CIRI and other Alaska Native groups gave up lands to allow its creation, with the understanding that mining was going to be part of the equation here. CIRI had the lands first and really played a pivotal role in allowing the creation of that park. And in exchange, they got road and port easement rights that were written into law through a federal act of Congress. And I think in the state, the state, despite some perceptions on Alaska due to some very high profile project, it is a place that welcomes mining. And it's a place that knows how to permit mines. There's 5 or so in production right now. And given the nature of the project, in our view, really the only impediment is making sure we've hit critical mass, critical size, and making sure we do it right.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, Darwin. I think you lost me for a second, but I caught most of the answer. I don't know if you covered the history that you have in Alaska. Maybe you can talk about how long you've been working in the region.
Yeah, sure. So I think I first worked up there in 1997. So I've got a long history. Most of it was in Southeast Alaska in the Panhandle area. I was VPX for a company called Niblack, where we basically doubled or tripled the size of the resource and put in underground development there. It stalled out a little bit, but it was a great experience for me earlier in my career. And prior to this, I was with a company called Constantine, where again, I was at a VPX level. So where we made a discovery, we grew that discovery to just under 15 million tons. We brought in a Japanese smelting company as a partner. Very, very, very familiar with Alaska. It's a place, we know how to operate. And I think it's that history there that was a big part of why this Johnson Tract opportunity came our way. The CIRI group approached us and our management team. They were very, they wanted the right type of partners for the project. And I guess they figured we were it.
I don't think that we've discussed your board management team, and you've got quite a bit of bench strength and touched on some of the people involved.
Totally. No, you're exactly right. Like it's, I'm really proud of the group that we have and feel privileged with the board that we have. Mike Cinnamon, CFO for B2 Gold, is on our board. Michael Gray, a very well-respected mining analyst. Lance Miller, who's got tremendously well connected within Alaska. He is an Alaskan, and he works with one of the other Alaska Native Corps, the NANA, who are the owners of the Red Dog mine with Teck. Anne Lavelle is also a wonderful contributor. She's brings a lot of legal and sustainability experience. And then, technically, we are in a very technical business. We're explorers, we're geologists, and Ian Cunningham Dunlop, my VPX, has a lot of history in the biz. He was formerly with Marco Day's group of companies through Frontier and I guess through the Long Canyon discovery. A lot of history in the north. He used to actually be exploration manager at the SK mine for Homestake, which plays out well for us here because what we're exploring here has some likeness to SK in that it's this high-grade polymetallic deposit with the VMS signature and happens to be the exact same age rocks too.
Thanks, Darwin. I think Deborah's having some technical difficulties, but we do have some audience questions, so we'll get to those. Are you considering using a group such as Gold Spot Discovery to enable prioritization to target drilling?
I think at this point in time, no, and that's largely just because we have a lot of expertise in-house. So Ian, my VPX, manages, we have separate project managers for each of our projects in Timmins and Ontario who bring a lot of experience. We have a chief exploration geologist. Not a lot of juniors do. He's got a PhD, and he's a whiz with all of the modern tools there. So, possibly, but right now we're pretty comfortable with our in-house talent. We feel pretty blessed that way.
Okay, great. And is the northeast offset still a priority for the rest of the season?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's still very much an important part of our story, it's an area we've been working on.
Okay, great. We have another question from the audience. If you were to guess, since the gold is up high in the middle DC, if the dacite is deeper, would you think only base metals or gold could still be found deeper in the middle DC area?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, in fact, the silver is up high, so we get very high, plus 1,000 gram type silver numbers right up on the ridges, and then down at middle DC we're getting lower. That's where the gold seems to come out. We actually thought it was predominantly gold, but actually in that last intersection, we had very strong silver as well. But thus far, it's down into the dacite where the gold seems to like to occur. And interestingly enough, that's the exact same sort of regional stratigraphic position that we see the gold occurring at our main deposit 4 kilometers away. So whether there's something, you know, about the chemistry of that unit as it reacts to the host rock that's controlling it, or whether, you know, it's speaking to paleo depth at the time of mineralization, we don't know. I expect the latter. And we actually see a lot of similar features, some differences, but a lot of similar features to the main deposit at DC, in that we have this distinct anhydrate. It's a real diagnostic alteration assemblage that we see at our main deposit areas. So we see that in the footwall to the mineralization we're seeing at DC, which is encouraging. And one of the things I really like about that contact area is what we're seeing is it seems like a lot of mineralization is kind of capped by the younger andesites. I mean, they're mineralized as well, but they also seem to provide a little bit of a lid on the system for that type of gold and mineralization we're seeing right at DC. And it seems to project underneath relatively unaltered rocks. And the significance of that, or the meaning of that, is that it means there's a lot of the system is potentially blind, and that really opens up a lot of turf to us. And so we're going to be targeting more of that contact, and we've got some good ideas on kind of where to go next.
There's one more audience question, Darwin, and I don't know how thorough you can be in your answer, but what's your outlook for the gold price?
You know, I think if, you know, all the signs with inflation suggest it should be moving higher. It's hard to understand why it's been lagging. You know, all indicators are inflation is going to stick around and it should be moving higher. So we are believers in a higher gold price. All of that said, the one thing that we have, and it's always been our philosophy, is when you have grade, you can be a bit agnostic about the price of gold. It doesn't matter if you've got grade and margin. And that's, I think you see that in our results last week. You know, there was a lot of good results released over the last month, very solid results with other companies, and people traded down on them, you know, because we're in a soft market. I think if you have the right type of grade, people understand that it's a difference maker, and we saw a very positive response with our results last week, which was nice to see, and it is part of our story. So
yeah, you certainly did get quite the market reaction. I think at one point you're up over 90%. So I agree, it was a standout because there have been some really nice holes put out by other companies over the past couple of weeks, and like we discussed earlier, I think there's a lot of people that are selling into the results. But it certainly wasn't the case last week for you. So congrats on that. I hope to see a few more of those out of your current drill program. I have one question just about M&A. There's been some M&A starting in this cycle, some in a relevant area to where your Ontario projects are. How do you look at M&A as part of your strategy? What do you think this means for...
Yeah, the last half of your question broke up on me there, Deb. But in terms of M&A and how we approach our strategy, I mean, we're committed to building the company here. We think we have company-making assets, but we are also very well aware that, you know, assets that have grade and margin and are uncomplicated are ones that are generally fairly desirable to others, and sometimes you don't get to dictate your future. So, you know, for a group like us, you know, we're not actively seeking M&A, certainly not now, though we feel we can continue to build value with the drill bit. You know, our forte as a group is in the exploration and the discovery process and the growing and de-risking projects. But in a broader sense, you know, I think the seniors there's fewer of them because they keep amalgamating. And I think where a lot of the M&A is going to happen is in those, you know, aggressive, you know, more newcomers or single asset companies that really want to get out there. That said, you know, the group that's invested in us is, you know, is a big player and a multi, you know, they're a group that's looking for multiple deposits and mines multiple deposits, and you know, we'll be looking for something that's better than a couple 100,000 ounces a year in production. And that's what our target would be for something like this. So if all goes well, it should be attractive to a lot of groups. And I think at some point, somebody's got to start making a move in the M&A space here. I mean, there's just too many good assets sitting out there, and they've got to replace the reserves at some point. But it's still going to be selective.
And is your strategy different in Ontario compared to Alaska in terms of M&A?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, right now our strategy is in Ontario is make sure that the market's aware of the value there. I don't think we have been seeing it in terms of share price and valuation. I think if you took those assets and you sat them in an independent company, it would have an attractive valuation, because real estate in Timmins always commands a premium. And to be able to, you know, such a competitive place as Timmins, to be able to have such big, beefy, consolidated land positions is tough. And it's an area, those assets, the core of them were in Constantine, the previous company I worked with. And, you know, I've been keen to get after them for a long time. So my primary focus out there is to generate value with the drill bit. We think there's tremendous opportunity to make the next big discovery in Timmins, and that's our focus right now. All of that said, you know, there's a lot more activity, and your threshold's a lot lower, and you know, it's not hard to see the consolidation that started in the East Timmins camp continue, because it's just, you know, like I just look at something like Val-d'Or and sort of how that played out over 10 years, and it's not hard to see the same thing ultimately happen. And I think a lot of the hard work's gone on by guys like Northern Minetta and you know, ourselves, and yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But for now, my priority is to see what we can do with the drill bit.
Well, it seems like you've got a lot of news flow coming in that area, and consistent too, because you'll move from Alaska to Ontario. So you should have consistent news flow till late winter, early spring. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Really for the next 6 months. And then we'll come out with our resource estimates. With the metallurgy, we'll come out with the resource estimate. And by then we should be firing back up. And it won't be long before firing back up in Alaska.
Great. Well, looking forward to seeing those results. I'm sure next time we get an update, you'll have an idea of what you want to do for your next program next summer. But right now, sounds like you're just starting to get the results in. So exciting times. I appreciate the update. Is there anything that you wanted to cover?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a great opportunity to cover things off and, you know, update our shareholders on what we're doing and what these new results mean. I mean, it's just, you know, we couldn't be happier in terms of proof of concept of establishing a second center of high grade on Johnson, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last one. So it's what we felt about the property in the beginning. It's great to see it. It's still very early days, and we got a ton of backlog drill holes still to come. So should be a good 6 months.
Well, it's a nice initial hole, that's for sure.
Set the bar fairly high for ourselves.
But yeah, thanks. And thanks for tolerating my terrible Wi-Fi. I do apologize. But yeah, have a great afternoon. Thanks everyone for participating. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out and I'll get those answered for you. And yeah, looking forward to the next set of results.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Deb.